That chilling snapshot is permanently burned into your brain, haunting every single person following this terrifying investigation. I'm talking about those crimson stains outside Nancy Guthrie's Tucson residence, trailing off those patio tiles straight into the driveway. Society has stared blindly at these visuals for 53 days, primarily having a gut reaction to the pure terror of the scene. An 84-year-old grandmother bleeding out on her doorstep is obviously going to spark pure outrage. We need to strip away those feelings today. Focusing entirely on the hidden narrative, those splatters are desperately trying to whisper. Every splatter holds a specific form, and every cluster reveals a distinct origin. These crimson paths lay out a literal map for experts to decode. Something federal authorities have been deciphering since the very first hour. The general public just recently received the decoded version of that evidence, and it completely shifts the narrative. Detectives have known these gruesome details from the start, but we must lay ground rules before diving into the science. The upcoming information stems strictly from verified professionals sharing their authorized findings openly with the press. Our sources include medical examiners and veteran federal investigators, though we are absolutely not pointing fingers at any specific suspect today. We are simply breaking down logical deductions derived strictly from released images and official police reports. Anyone holding clues regarding Nancy's location must dial 1-800-CALL-FBI immediately, helping us uncover what these droplets reveal to detectives. Studying crimson splash dynamics has functioned as a respected scientific field for more than 100 years. The entire concept relies on one basic truth: gravity impacts fluids in incredibly reliable, mathematically sound ways. Fluid escaping a human body will always react identically under gravity, no matter who the victim happens to be. Examining a coagulated spot reveals the exact velocity upon impact, showing whether the target was sprinting or entirely frozen. We determine the drop height and injury type, since severed arteries spray vastly differently compared to minor surface scratches. Getting struck forcefully across the head generates a completely separate visual signature than a busted-up nose. Fluids forcefully projected outward by violently coughing or exhaling create an undeniably unique physical structure, looking wildly apart from a standard passive drip. That detail is a massive game-changer for Nancy's investigation, seeing as the exterior evidence entirely rules out several categories of bodily harm. It strictly matches highly specific acts of brutal violence. Once you grasp the exact trauma inflicted, the entire narrative of that yard attack transforms entirely, highlighting Dr. Michael Bowden's ring theory. Just under 2 weeks following her vanishing act this past February, a major news outlet released an exclusive conversation featuring Dr. Bowden. He stands out as arguably the most highly respected medical examiner across the entire nation. This former big city official has personally reviewed physical clues tied to virtually every major groundbreaking trial over the past 50 years. The specialist spent hours analyzing those widely circulated images of her patio stains, uncovering a detail hidden in plain sight. The unique contours forming those tiny red dots highlighted a crucial piece of the puzzle that almost everyone ignored. Those marks contained a very specialized type of biological material, which the expert quickly pointed out during his recent press appearance. He noticed hollow circles forming inside the splatters, creating distinct rings that hold a massive secret. These specific ring formations almost exclusively originate from nasal or oral cavities due to heavy oxygen exposure. Let that sink in for a second. Oxygen exposure completely alters the profile, distinguishing it entirely from a solid drip falling off a slashed forearm. Standard injuries drop heavy fluids that smash against concrete, forming completely solid circles without empty spaces. However, fluids escaping through oral cavities or nostrils undergo a radical physical transformation. Breathing infuses the fluid with tiny oxygen bubbles, fundamentally changing its density right before it splatters across the ground. That trapped gas bursts upon impact, leaving behind an empty core that trained professionals instantly recognize without a shadow of a doubt. Bowden zoomed right in on those hollowed-out impact zones, deeply analyzing the rings. He essentially broadcasted the stark reality the victim suffered severe enough facial trauma to actively hack up her own fluids. You do not simply expel fluids from your airways while lounging around enjoying a quiet evening. No 84-year-old spontaneously hacks up vital fluids outside at 2 in the morning without a brutal external catalyst triggering it. The human skull leaks from these orifices following heavy impacts, typically indicating a vicious punch, shattering the cheekbones or crushing the eye sockets. Victims suffer this exact bleeding pattern when an attacker violently smothers them, ruthlessly cutting off oxygen supply during a vicious physical struggle. Trapped, being forcefully crushed against concrete inevitably suffocates the lungs, forcing those bodily fluids upward into the mouth, just as the expert explicitly confirmed. He stated clearly that these markers paint a terrifying picture, proving through sheer volume and placement that a violent kidnapping undoubtedly unfolded right there. The nightmare deepened instantly. Those crimson splashes prove our victim was physically incapable or entirely unwilling to staunch the facial wound while fleeing her residence toward the paved driveway. According to the veteran expert, incapable or completely unwilling. Both starkly contrasting possibilities paint an absolutely horrifying picture regarding the distressed woman's physical condition the moment those scarlet beads stained her porch tiles. Lacking capability meant her arms were immobilized, suggesting forceful physical restraint. A physical barrier kept her from throwing her hands up, blocking a natural human reflex to shield and plug a severe facial injury. Making zero effort implies she was entirely blacked out or severely incapacitated, rendering her completely deaf to critical internal distress alarms. Regardless of the reason, her mobility was hijacked and someone else commanded her frantic footsteps. Furthermore, the brutal blunt force trauma destroying her airway happened long before she ever stepped foot onto that exterior patio cement. We must be brutally honest about one crucial fact here. Dr. Michael Baden possesses zero official ties to this ongoing probe. The renowned pathologist isn't employed by federal agents, nor has he examined the tangible crime scene, relying entirely on circulating internet snapshots. His brilliant deductions remain educated guesses rather than certified proof, functioning as a massive roadblock but simultaneously offering absolute brilliance. It acts as a disadvantage since authorities hoard classified criminal details he simply cannot legally review. Yet it serves as an eye-opener since his incredible deductions sprang purely from widely circulated media imagery. Snapshots viewed by millions of amateur sleuths miraculously flipped the entire scientific narrative of that fateful evening completely upside down. Because if a medical examiner possessing supreme stature could spot oxygenated splatter straight through a computer monitor screen, federal agents holding the genuine artifacts surely understood this grim reality from day one, realizing the stains contained a hidden language we mortals couldn't decode. Nancy survived her initial departure. But wait until you hear the massive twist that shook up the entire investigation just days ago. Another massive bombshell hiding within the doctor's review focuses squarely on the geometry of those scattered marks. Former federal profiler Jim Clemente hopped onto Brian Entine's NewsNation broadcast and delivered a powerful statement that absolutely shattered the overwhelming media circus. After closely studying the scattered crimson specks, the seasoned veteran stated this: "Our victim definitely had a pulse exiting the residence, because finding long, smeared trails dragged along the hardwood floors would signal a completely different, far more tragic ordeal altogether. However, absolutely zero credible reports have surfaced, hinting at any ghastly smudged trails existing. Meanwhile, the specific way these crimson beads fell strongly suggests an upright victim moving and injured, rather than suffering an instantly fatal, life-ending blow. These marks flawlessly mirror a conscious victim walking away while actively bleeding, disproving the theory of a murdered corpse being aggressively hauled out by sheer force. Eliminating the distinct probability of friction, smudges naturally occurring when dead weight gets forcefully yanked across interior floorboards. We face gravity-fed splashes here, plunging from an elevated source and crashing downward in tracks, proving continuous forward momentum. Consequently, the exact second those red tears kissed the patio cement, our missing woman maintained a beating heart. Grasp the sheer magnitude this detail provides law enforcement, heavily reinforcing their ultimate goal of returning this innocent soul to safety. Right as she stepped through the exterior doorway, her lungs were inflating. Despite obvious facial trauma spilling fresh crimson, obviously suffering after enduring a brutal attack, she remained completely amongst the living. A truth written clearly within her own spilled fluids. Providing she survived that initial exit, this 53-day manhunt operates purely as a frantic salvation effort rather than grim corpse retrieval. But brace yourself for the ultimate paradigm shift. Seeing as every scientific debate previously obsessed over the exterior environment alone for weeks, everyone fixated on the veranda, the concrete strip, and the sinister pathway leading straight toward her missing vehicle's parking spot. Yet on March 25th, just hours before this broadcast, reporter Ashley Banfield pivoted everything, anchoring her wildly popular true crime show. This incredibly well-connected investigative reporter dropped an absolute bombshell onto the unsuspecting public, uncovering a suppressed secret hidden by detectives since day 3. She finally questioned the actual location of the initial assault, questioning what truly went down indoors. She graciously thanked her loyal audience before dropping a massive revelation. A highly trusted insider confessed on day 3 about gruesome scarlet stains secretly covering the interior floors. Unbelievable. Furthermore, an entirely separate contact fiercely verified those horrifying indoor fluid discoveries, proving violence definitely erupted within. Fresh crimson marks dotted the immediate interior foyer, forming a terrifying geometry that perfectly matched the gruesome exterior layout. According to the broadcaster's elite informants, the journalist showed zero hesitation, backed by 2 insiders. An initial informant leaked the grim interior discovery back on February 4th, which marked day 3, only to be echoed perfectly by a secondary confidant shortly after. Those stains definitely existed indoors, prompting the latter insider to spill even darker secrets. My other contact dropped a bombshell. The first responders on scene genuinely believed they were just hunting for a confused lady who took a walk. Relatives flagged down the cops simply because a senior citizen missed her Sunday service. But once the veteran detectives pulled up, the clues screamed for serious backup, prompting an immediate call to the murder squad. Absolutely. Patrol units rolling up to that residence spotted a crime scene so grim it instantly required elite homicide professionals. A routine wellness check quickly escalated into a full-blown murder probe thanks to the horrific discoveries hidden indoors. For weeks, the reporter agonized over rumors of indoor blood splatters without having a clue about the exact locations, until a major breakthrough dropped recently, finally cracking the mystery. An insider officially confirmed those red stains started right behind the entryway and perfectly mirrored the exterior splatter. The journalist mapped out the grim path like this. It originated indoors, bleeding past the foyer, crossing the doorstep, and continuing onto the patio. This wasn't some random outdoor accident. What we have here is a crimson roadmap telling a very clear, sequential, and terrifying tale. Whatever brutal attack caused those injuries kicked off dead in the middle of Nancy's living room long before she ever approached the exit, and way before hitting the pavement, laying down a horrific track the entire way. Detectives care deeply about this specific timeline for a crucial reason. An indoor origin point proves that the violent struggle, the initial assault, the exact second this victim met, her fate went down behind closed doors, ruling out an ambush on the stoop, or a surprise attack while grabbing the mail. The nightmare started inside, meaning either she fled or got dragged out, dragging the evidence along. To a seasoned detective, finding stains that connect the living room directly to the patio writes an undeniable script. That forensic evidence speaks louder and clearer than human memory ever could. Spatter patterns simply cannot fake a timeline. Gravity and motion play by strict rules. The drops shout out a clear path indoors. Outdoors. Vanished. The expert noted these fell from at least 2 feet up. Analyzing the stain's edges pinpoints exactly where it came from. Likely facial injuries, coughing up oxygenated red drops. The forward momentum maps out the timeline beautifully from interior to exterior. Plus, the spacing proves the victim was actively fleeing or being moved while actively bleeding. Moving on. Decoding the altitude of the wound and the sheer volume of the flow paints an incredibly detailed portrait of those final moments. Fast forward to March 17th, when a top-tier crime scene expert went live on satellite radio to break it down. This specialist brings 18 years of gritty fieldwork and intense lab analytics to the table. By scrutinizing leaked press photos and clips of the driveway, she uncovered chilling metrics that previous experts completely missed. The analyst estimated the victim's speed hovered right around a brisk stroll. The flow rate was terrifyingly fast based on those puddles. Can we guess the exact weapon? Not from this alone. We're looking at classic free-falling drops here. Those tiny specks branching off around the edges are textbook secondary splashes. You only get those tiny coronas when liquid hits hard concrete from a decent altitude. My professional guess puts the wound over 2 feet off the floor. Pinpointing if it leaked from a severed finger, a slashed bicep, or a broken nose is basically impossible right now. However, this massive volume absolutely screams that the poor woman was losing fluids at a lethal rate. Just glancing at those snapshots confirms the leakage started at least 2 feet above the pavement. While identifying the exact body part remains totally elusive through a camera lens, calculating the sheer force of the bleed is dead simple. The visual evidence proves beyond a doubt that the victim was hemorrhaging rapidly. Elevation is everything in forensic geometry since gravity leaves a unique signature. Splatters from 18 inches up simply don't match 3-foot plunges, completely changing the puddle size, the jaggedness of the borders, swapping clean lines for jagged spikes, plus dictating whether tiny satellite droplets burst outward upon impact. Every single one of these physical traits transforms flawlessly alongside height. Hitting the dirt from a 2-foot drop guarantees the wound was elevated, placing the victim in an upright or slightly bent posture. She absolutely wasn't crawling on her belly. Nobody was pinning her against the tiles. Either she walked it out, or her attacker lugged her body, keeping the laceration over 2 feet high. The lab tech remained incredibly firm about those puddle gaps. Given the massive fluid loss, a casual stroll with a minor scrape simply couldn't create that chaotic splatter zone. The tight clusters scream a catastrophic artery breach, basically highlighting a severely critical, rapidly pumping wound. Santoro dropped an absolute bombshell by focusing entirely on the terrifying story the blood refused to tell. After examining the images, she confirmed the splatter patterns completely lacked the signature traits of a bullet impact. Firearm wounds generally leave behind a distinct mist of tiny, rapid-fire droplets, usually accompanied by a massive amount of pooling. The droplets outside the victim's residence simply do not match that narrative for Santoro. They strongly suggest a brutal strike directly to the face. This blunt trauma might have sparked a severe nasal hemorrhage, or perhaps ripped open her remarkably delicate skin. Older adults routinely suffer from tissue tears like this, but her next observation truly delivered a gut-wrenching realization. Scanning through the provided clips and pictures, she noticed a complete absence of red stains directly around the entryway. We now face conflicting evidence. Banfield's informants claim fluids pooled just inside the threshold, while Santoro spots absolutely nothing on the exterior panels. What is the ultimate takeaway from this baffling contradiction? It proves that by the time Nancy breached that final threshold, her fate was sealed. Her agonizing wounds had either just opened up or had already been flowing steadily from deep inside the residence. The savage beating was officially over, meaning those porch snapshots simply captured the tail end of a gruesome path originating indoors. This brings us to Maureen O'Connell and the glaring mystery of the missing pattern gaps. Bowden identified the fluid as oxygenated spray from an airway, whereas Santoro confirmed it fell from over 2 feet up during a rapid hemorrhage. Banfield then provided the spatial context, proving the violent sequence started indoors before spilling outside. Yet a fourth critical clue hides within those scarlet splatters, completely ignored by previous experts but potentially holding the master key to the entire case. We must talk about the pattern interruptions, or more accurately, the chilling fact that they simply do not exist. Forensic investigators use the term void to describe a very literal concept, a clear break inside a continuous fluid trail. Stepping through dripping fluids forces a shoe to block the splatter, leaving behind a completely empty space where crimson droplets ought to be. A wounded victim fleeing on foot leaves a broken path behind them, as their own shoes shield the pavement from the falling drops. Whenever someone bleeds heavily enough to paint those exterior tiles red, an unmistakable physical map is forged. Crime scene experts can easily calculate your exact pacing, stance width, and fleeing speed, but Nancy's terrifying trail showed absolutely zero interruptions. Former federal investigator Maureen O'Connell examined those exact images during her March 8th television appearance with Brian Enton, offering a razor-sharp assessment. The splatter gathered heavily in areas that desperately called for shoe prints, yet she found nothing but a continuous red canvas. The visual evidence lacked even a single break or shoe-shaped empty space along the gruesome route. O'Connell articulated her disturbing findings like this: "The complete lack of gaps heavily suggests she never walked outside on her own. An intensely concentrated circular splatter like that absolutely demands physical interruptions. A stepping foot or a dragging object absolutely must block out a section of that massive stain, yet the surface remains completely untouched by footprints. Any large circular pool should feature obvious blanks from footsteps cutting through it. But finding zero breaks led her to one undeniable truth. Nancy was absolutely not moving under her own power. An unbroken canvas means zero obstacles blocked the descending fluids from violently kissing the concrete beneath. Nancy left no physical footprints simply because she hovered above the earth in an attacker's arms, leading to the chilling sequence involving the doorways and her shifting skull. At this point, O'Connell had handed detectives their most explosive breakthrough, yet someone had swaddled Nancy and hoisted her away. However, her subsequent remark instantly upgraded a simple medical observation into a horrifyingly vivid recreation of the final moments at that entrance. She laid out her grim hypothesis. Keep in mind this represents her professional deduction, rather than an officially stamped police narrative. The killers likely bundled her up tightly like a blanket roll, forcing them to clumsily shuffle backward just to yank open that massive wooden entryway. Overcoming that hurdle meant immediately wrestling with a secondary barrier. Specifically, the heavy wrought iron security gate. While awkwardly maneuvering their heavy cargo downward, her skull probably slipped to the side, unleashing that horrific shower of crimson. Hearing her explicitly describe Nancy swaddled like a burrito paints a haunting picture as she mentally reconstructs the struggle at the threshold. Analyze Nancy's main access point for a moment. Whoever did this had to bypass a pair of distinct physical blockades before reaching the pavement. A colossal timber frame serves as the initial line of defense. Beyond that sits an intimidating wrought iron barrier, creating an absolute nightmare for anyone trying to secretly lug a paralyzed, bundled human body outside. Juggling a lifeless victim whilst defeating two separate locks requires an attacker to wildly reverse their stance just to swing the first panel free. Bypassing the outer bars forces a total grip change, as holding a dead weight of 150 pounds demands constant, exhausting physical realignments. Right in the middle of this frantic balancing act, just as O'Connell proposed, the victim's drooping head suddenly shifted position. Bind a victim tightly enough, and you trap the evidence, keeping any facial bleeding securely locked away. However, adjust your hold or let that heavy burden slip, and the victim's neck might twist, causing those dark fluids to plummet directly toward the floorboards. These spatters weren't flung, wiped, or pulled across the surface. They plummeted vertically, forming dense clusters right upon the patio stones. This matches the expert's exact theory. Reaching the entryway forced the assailant to step backward just to swing that massive wooden barrier wide open. After that, the attacker wrestled with the exterior security latch, dragging open that heavy wrought iron grating blocking the path. While struggling to carry her down the steps, her neck likely rolled to the side, triggering that sudden leakage. Navigating past that heavy timber entryway and the metal fencing required serious physical exertion, which inevitably jostled the victim's position and caused the red droplets to spill. This conclusion goes way beyond mere guesswork. It stands as a meticulous recreation, perfectly aligning with forensic facts verified by 4 distinct specialists across 3 totally different scientific fields. One pathologist noted bubbly fluids from the airways, while another technician confirmed these spatters plummeted quickly from over 2 feet high. Another analyst saw 0 empty spaces or shoe prints disturbing the puddles, exactly matching reports from our lead investigative sources. The macabre path starts indoors and breaches the doorway, giving federal agents a single unified hypothesis backed by 4 perfectly aligned clues. Leaving biological evidence on Nancy Guthrie's patio wasn't some clumsy blunder in the traditional sense, nor was it a simple moment of forgetfulness. This wasn't simple carelessness, it was pure, undeniable gravity. Lugging a bound, 150-pound female with facial lacerations through a pair of heavy entryways guarantees that gravity wins. You simply cannot stop the dripping. Gravity always prevails, because no amount of hasty swaddling can completely seal a shifting corpse and keep fluids from eventually leaking onto the floorboards. Here lies the abductor's fatal error. Though it certainly wasn't from a lack of careful preparation, he undoubtedly strategized everything. Yet fluid dynamics ignore human intentions, leaving behind a permanent biological map of his precise actions outside the house. Detectives can easily determine exactly where the victim's wounds were located just by analyzing the splatter patterns. Impact markers reveal the exact elevation of her suspended form, while untouched puddles prove the assailant lugged her rather than making her walk. Following that grim crimson pathway from the interior to the exterior pinpoints the exact origin of the brutal struggle. Furthermore, the heavy clustering of stains near the entranceways shows authorities precisely where the heavy lifting grew impossibly hard. Those barriers forced the culprit to adjust his hold and twist her neck, so 53 days later, detectives actually have a very solid foundation. They are building their case on an entryway saturated with glaring clues, and the monster who spilled them can never erase that damning truth. This story is not only about a crime scene, it is about truth, resilience, and the silent voice of evidence that never lies. Even when people try to hide their actions, the smallest details can speak louder than words. Every trace, every pattern, every overlooked sign holds meaning, reminding us that truth always leaves a path behind. One powerful lesson is that actions have consequences that cannot be erased. No matter how carefully someone plans, reality cannot be fully controlled. Nature, time, and truth have their own way of revealing what happened. This reminds us to live with integrity, because sooner or later, the truth surfaces. It also teaches us to respect knowledge and science. Careful observation, patience, and critical thinking can turn confusion into clarity. Instead of reacting only with emotion, we must learn to observe, question, and understand. Knowledge is not just power, it is a tool for justice. Most importantly, this story reminds us of the value of human life. Behind every case is a real person, a family, and a story that deserves dignity and answers. We should never become numb to tragedy. Let this be more than a story. Let it inspire awareness, compassion, and a commitment to truth, because even in darkness, truth finds a way to be seen.